Hey, how's it going? Hope you've had a good week so far. In terms of gaming, I've just picked up FC 26. Not bad, I haven't played FIFA since like 21, so I'm not entirely sure if it's an improvement over 25 and 24. But yeah. Also, I am awaiting Ghost of Yotei, which arrives tomorrow. I'm not interested in all the political BS. I just want to play a great game. 6, which arrives on the 10th of this month. We're already in October. Summer is officially over. It is 01/10/25. Battlefield 6, everybody. Looking forward to the single player campaign. I've seen it, and it looks like it could be challenging Call of Duty this year. So, what have you been up to? Welcome back to another Foxy Games UK News video. If you like this sort of thing, like, subscribe, hit notification, all that good stuff. We've got a few news stories today, courtesy our first one of gamesindustry.biz, where there seems to be some issue regarding Xbox hardware. So the headline reads, retailers were always going to drop Xbox over Game Pass. This is in response to Costco no longer stocking Xbox consoles, and apparently retailers are stocking the Xbox console, which is not going to bode well for Xbox next gen console. So Microsoft is losing retailer support, and that is never a positive thing. But as Microsoft's strategy focuses increasingly on Game Pass content, it became an acceptable trade-off for the company. So the decision by Costco to drop Xbox hardware from its stores may feel like a milestone, but the road on which that milestone is located is one we've been traveling for quite some time. Bricks and mortar retailers have been gradually shrinking the shelf space devoted to Xbox for several years, including the games, and in many countries it's increasingly rare to find Xbox products even on online retailers. Specialist retailers will stock Xbox products, of course, like console controllers and accessories, but not the hardware. But generalist retailers are tapping out. It's not a stretch to imagine that within the next year or so, Xbox products will be almost exclusively the preserve of specialist outlets and Microsoft's own online store. A decade ago, retail giving up on Xbox in this way would have been a serious warning sign, interpreted as an indicator that Microsoft was on its way out, really, and the console business out of it entirely. Now though, the signals are a bit more mixed. I mean, it was only this week we saw data suggesting that Xbox owners are more actively engaged than gamers on other platforms, at least in terms of the number of games they play. But isn't that obvious? I mean, if the games are a la carte via Game Pass, of course you're going to be engaged in more of them. And Microsoft and Asus opened pre-orders for the high-end Xbox-branded gaming handhelds, which are PC gaming handhelds with Xbox branding. So it's entirely a handheld PC that they helped co-create. By some metrics, Microsoft's games business is certainly active and even healthy. Regardless, it would take an incredible amount of spin and a very credulous audience to claim that being dropped by mass market retail is actually a good sign for Xbox. If the hardware were truly competitive with PlayStation and Nintendo Switch in the markets, this wouldn't be happening. The significant price hikes earlier this year for consoles already being outsold by their competitors were just another nail in the coffin for Xbox. Sales of the company's first-party games, for example, almost certainly suffer because of the launch day availability on Game Pass. But that's seemingly judged to be an acceptable cost if it increases subscriber numbers and retention. Retail sales are a sacrifice on the same altar. The success of Game Pass and of Microsoft's digital distribution strategy more broadly has sidelined physical software sales to a greater extent on Xbox than any other platform. According to data provided by gamesindustry.biz, Dorian Block at Nielsen Q/GfK Entertainment, Microsoft's console accounted for just 11% of physical game sales in the UK in 2022, with Nintendo on 48% and Sony 40%. The predicted numbers of 2025 are far lower, worryingly so, with Microsoft at just 6%, compared to 52% for Nintendo and 42% for Sony. It's a similar story in the US where Matt Piscatella from Sakana has confirmed to Industry.biz that Xbox is by far the most digital forward platform, with sales of physical software on the platform trailing behind the numbers for Nintendo and Sony. But that number is predicted to fall to just 13% in 2025. So with physical software sales dwindling to a trickle, Xbox just isn't a good use of their bandwidth. Losing mainstream retail channels will be another blow to these sales, but if consumers are still engaging with Xbox and Game Pass on other devices, then Microsoft will be satisfied with the trade-off. Lacking physical retail presence for Xbox will rob it of certain opportunities to reach new consumers and market the platform. That is a particularly damaging prospect given that Sony and Nintendo still have a healthy amount of shelf space at retail. It will hurt more, really, from a perception point of view. And it will hurt more at specific points. In the pre-holiday sales season, for example, Xbox will now lack any form of presence in many of the venues where people are gift shopping. While Microsoft may be willing to accept disengagement from retail as a cost of its Game Pass strategy, that doesn't mean it should ignore the need for damage control. Getting your products out in front of people in the real world remains an important part of the consumer sales process, no matter what line of business you're in. And we in turn will turn to winter and the gift buying season approaches in many of the markets. The company would do well to explore alternative ideas for how to get Xbox and Game Pass in front of consumers. It may be able to afford dropping out of retail, but it certainly can't risk dropping out of consumers' headspace. What an interesting read. I strongly advise you peruse. There is a link in this video's description because there's a lot more I missed out with much more detail and context, but I gave you the overall view. But, it's good news that gamers are still engaged on the Xbox platform. Perhaps Microsoft is transitioning more to a PC model where, box products just don't matter to them. How many PC gamers do you hear complaining that they can't buy a physical copy of a game? Which is why I'm not on PC. I love physical copies. I like smelling the plastic, ripping off the cellophane. It's almost like a ritual to me. And look, I don't know if this affects you, but when I look through my digital games library, because it's not present, because it's not on a shelf, sometimes I forget I actually own a game. I sift through my online digital library and I think, oh, I actually own that? Whereas games on a shelf, you just pick them and you say, yeah, I'm going to play that today. I think I'll give that a go. So that's really that story. But if we move on to PSU.com, headline reads that Sony is eyeing IP pickups with an aim of becoming an entertainment trading powerhouse. Sony Group is looking to ramp up its acquisition of IPs in order to establish itself as an entertainment trading house. According to a report on Nikkei Asia, the PlayStation console maker has been growing its investments over the years rather than creating new IP from scratch, which extends to other areas outside of video games. For example, it has investments in Kadokawa, which has an extensive portfolio of young adult novels. The company's investments into IP reached 1.9 trillion yen over the past 7 years, which includes games, movies, and anime. A veteran of Sony has said that the process of purchasing, developing, and combining businesses and IPs is to bolster value as an entertainment trading house and is a strategy that actually mirrors a number of major trading houses in Japan, including Itochu, Mitsubishi, and Mitsui. Daiwa Securities analyst Ayaka Inamata said, is a quote, "There's a gap between the company's current value and its stock price. One factor may be that the company is not disclosing enough information to enable a proper evaluation of its entertainment business." A Sony representative said that the format holder will enhance our disclosure moving forward. And back in September, Sony introduced Pollinator Network, an internet talent search system using generative AI to enhance matching accuracy. Oh, there's the AI. This results in over 200 cases of professional expertise and opinions being shared, including the application of gaming technologies to film production. So it looks like Sony's really growing itself now, moving beyond games as it said it would. That doesn't mean it's giving up on games, it just means it's expanding for revenue purposes. What are these corporations all about? Reoccurring revenue. Moving on to our final news story of the video, pushsquare.com. Sony is a terrible company that's blowing it in the games business. According to who? Michael Pachter. Not another one. So, business analyst Michael Pachter seemingly really has it in for Sony, a Sony hater of sorts, as he has now said it's a terrible company. Remember when he said that, I think it was like 5-6 years ago, I covered this. Michael Pachter said PlayStation won't be around in 10 years. But yeah, he's calling it a terrible company that is currently blowing it in the games business. This has followed on really from suggestions he made last month of clueless management that doesn't know what it's doing. What, clueless? Sony, like they really don't know what they're doing? The latest comments were made during an interview with Yahoo Finance as part of a discussion surrounding the news of an EA acquisition from 3 partners. Pachter believes connect to TV is the future, and when talking of any further acquisitions, the analyst responded that the following should be the idea of buying Sony. Here's a quote: "No, Sony for sure not. Sony is a terrible company. They actually are blowing it in the games business. Games are moving to connect to TV, so I think all of the participants that are going to deliver the way we get movies like Netflix," which is Netflix, that's been boycotted right now, isn't it? "Forget the subscription model, just think about the iOS becoming your TV. So free to play games on your TV. Who is going to deliver that? Cloud providers and AI." Pachter's argument for Sony being a terrible company seems to come from the idea it isn't heavily invested in cloud gaming and streaming, as he suggests this is the way video games will be made available in the future. It also is not making its games available to play directly off a TV. Instead, you need a PS5. This is despite PlayStation being one of the first to offer a video game streaming service in PlayStation Now from over 10 years ago, and currently offers a streaming-only handheld in the form of PlayStation Portal. Now, as for blowing it in the games business, Sony's most recent financial reports reveals the PlayStation division to be at its most profitable point in history. Q1 of fiscal year 2025 had its operating income at over $1 billion, making a 127% increase year over year. So much for the blowing it in the games business. Hardware sales, software sales, and the platform's monthly active users count are higher than 2024. But yeah, we know Pachter is like a 20% right, maybe 80% wrong, and I'm probably being very generous to him. But what do you think of Michael Pachter's latest comments? Let me know in the video. But that, my friends, brings us to the end of this video. Like, subscribe, hit notification, and all that good stuff. And always remember, play games, not corporations.